The plasma fire had finally ceased, leaving behind only the acrid smell of burnt metal and the haunting silence that always followed battle. Massey crouched behind the remains of a collapsed transport vessel, his rifle still warm in his hands, scanning the scorched landscape of Kepler 4b for any signs of movement. That's when he heard a soft, pained sound that cut through the eerie quiet like a knife. Against his better judgment, Massey moved toward the source. As a soldier in the human coalition, he'd been trained to leave no one behind. But the war with the Zypherian Empire had made everyone cautious. Trust was a luxury nobody could afford anymore. But when he found her, all caution evaporated. She lay half-buried beneath debris, her luminescent skin flickering weakly in the dying light of the binary suns. Any, though he wouldn't learn her name until later, was unlike any Zypherian he'd encountered before. Where most aliens from her species bore the harsh, angular features designed for war, her face held an unexpected softness. Her large, opalescent eyes met his, filled not with hostility, but with something that transcended species, fear and hope intertwined. "Please," she whispered in broken universal standard, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. "Help me." Massey should have walked away. Command would have ordered it. She wore the uniform of the enemy, bore the insignia of a Zypherian medical officer. But her hand, delicate and trembling, reached toward him with such desperate vulnerability that he found himself making a choice that would change everything. He holstered his rifle and began clearing the debris. Annie gasped as he lifted her, her body surprisingly light despite her height. Her blood, a strange iridescent silver, stained his uniform. But Massey didn't stop. He carried her through the wasteland, past the fallen soldiers of both sides, toward the emergency shelter he'd scouted earlier. "Why?" she asked, her accent thick but her confusion universal. "I am enemy, you're a medic," Massey replied, kicking open the shelter door. "And I'm a soldier, not a murderer." He tended to her wounds with the limited supplies he had, his field training kicking in despite never having treated a Zypherian before. Annie watched him work, her eyes never leaving his face, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Your name?" she asked softly. "Massey, Massey," she repeated, as if tasting the syllables. "I am Annie. In my language, it means light in darkness." 3 days they waited in that shelter for rescue, 3 days that felt like a lifetime. Annie's wounds healed with remarkable speed, her species' advanced biology working overtime to repair the damage. But something else was happening too, something Massey didn't understand. Annie began to follow him everywhere within the small space. When he checked the perimeter, she limped behind him. When he rationed their supplies, she sat beside him. When he tried to sleep, she positioned herself where she could watch over him. "You don't have to do this," Massey said on the second night. Unnerved by her constant presence, Annie tilted her head, her bioluminescent markings glowing softly in the darkness. "Do what?" "Follow me. Stay close. I saved your life, but you don't owe me anything." Her expression shifted, confusion mixed with something deeper. "In my culture," she began slowly, "when someone saves your life in battle, they become your thera. There is no word. Your anchor, your responsibility, your purpose. That's not how it works with humans," Massey said. "Though not unkindly, it is how it works with me," Annie replied with quiet finality. When rescue finally came, Massey expected Annie to be taken as a prisoner of war. Instead, she refused to leave his side, speaking rapidly in Zypherian to the confused coalition officers. Through a translator, they learned she was claiming sanctuary under an ancient Zypherian law, the right to serve the one who saved her life for the coalition. Desperate for any intelligence on Zypherian culture and medical technology, agreed to a provisional arrangement. Annie would remain with Massey as an observer and cultural liaison, provided she wore a tracking device and submitted to regular interrogations. Months passed. The war continued, but Massey found himself reassigned to diplomatic duties. With Annie as his shadow, she learned his routines, anticipated his needs, and proved invaluable in negotiations with captured Zypherian officers. But more than that, she became his friend. "You're still following me," Massey observed one evening as they walked through the space station's observation deck. Earth hung in the viewport like a blue marble, beautiful and distant, Always, Annie confirmed, a hint of amusement in her voice. She had learned to smile in the human way, though her own species expressed joy through the dancing patterns of light across their skin. Don't you miss your home? Your people? Annie was quiet for a long moment, her reflection ghostly in the viewport. You carried me off that battlefield when you could have left me to die, when you had every reason to hate me. In that moment, Massey, you showed me something I had never seen in War Mercy without expectation of reward. Kindness without calculation. She turned to face him fully, her eyes shimmering. You became my home that day. And yes, I will follow you everywhere, not because I must, but because I choose to. Because in a universe torn apart by war, you remind me that there is still light in the darkness. Massey felt something shift in his chest, understanding, perhaps, or acceptance. He had carried an injured alien woman off the battlefield expecting nothing in return. Instead, he had gained something far more valuable, a connection that transcended species, culture, and war itself. Well, he said finally, a small smile tugging at his lips, I guess I should get used to having company. Annie's skin illuminated with patterns of joy, and together they stood watching Earth spin slowly in the void. Two souls bound by an act of compassion in humanity's darkest hour. And wherever Massey went from that day forward, Annie followed not as a shadow, but as a light.